Jiggy cat on a damn feeling spree. This is Nagato, and you can't mimic my energy. 100 round drum and me hanging like a centipede.
Hey everyone, it's me Nagato's Adventure. Hope you guys are having an awesome day for today. As the title states, I'm going to be teaching you guys on how to successfully install RetroArch onto your modded PlayStation 4. And as many of you guys know, I'm really into emulation. Most of my content on my channel deals with a lot of about emulation itself, since I cover it on other consoles like the Vita, the 3DS, the PS3, and such and so forth. So seeing a build of RetroArch running on my PS4 is something really cool to showcase to you guys. One thing I do want to stay out the way, the intro may be a little longer than normal, only due to the fact that I do want to state a lot of key things and a lot of prerequisites, so you'll be on the same page for this process, since I like to go into detail on how to get this fully set up. But with that being stated out the way, here are some things to know. I will have this on the screen as well so you guys can see. But here is some cool things that this build can do. So you could run your ROMs or games from your HDD or your USB. So for example, if you have an external USB or like a FAT32 USB stick, you can run your ROM off that, or you could run just from your internal HD device. So for example, if you wanted just all your internal PS4 titles and your FPKGs on your PS4 internal hard drive and everything on your external hard drive, like your classic emulation ROMs, you can for this process, which is pretty cool. Or if you just want to test a game really quick and not having to deal with like FTPing your games over to your internal hard drive, that means you could just run your games off your USB. So that's really useful, and I really like that feature that the developers have implemented for this build. One thing I do want to state as well, some consoles may need BIOS files to run its cores, so it's just like any other RetroArch build. So like you need for PlayStation 1 or WonderSwan, for example, you may need their BIOS files to run. I personally tested out Crash Bandicoot for this before even recording, and it already ran the game just fine. But just for overall better performance, I do recommend always, in terms of just installing RetroArch for any platform, is to always have the BIOS files. I'll be teaching you guys on how to install your BIOS files today for certain systems, as well as throughout the tutorial, so don't worry about that. Some other things to know: this build can run Nintendo 64 emulation in quotes, but this is an experimental. So from reports from around the scene, some things are really buggy with N64. Hopefully in the future there will be updates to this build and more cores added. This is just a very early pre-release of this, so don't worry about a core emulation. But for N64 as of right now, it's not a go, and I probably will showcase that later on in the video, just how Nintendo 64 games run on the PS4, so don't worry about that. Another thing to note, there's a small bug where games won't load after closing it. All you have to do is just release the core and then just load the said title again, and I'll teach you guys on how to do that as well for this process. And this build, I just want to stay out there, is not a official RetroArch build from RetroArch themselves. However, this is a unreleased, unofficial build from other PS4 developers from around the scene that they have curated for us, and it's based off the original version 1.8.1 build. However, it still looks like RetroArch, the typical XMB GUI thing, so I'll show you guys that later on in the video. But those are just some key things I wanted to stay out the way. But let's go ahead and get started on today's prerequisites. Any useful guides, written tutorials, and any downloads and any stuff like that will be in the link in the description down below, as I have in all of my other videos. But for today, you will need a modded PlayStation 4 that is on firmware 5.05. I will stress this once again: you cannot do this on firmwares higher than 5.05, even though I'm probably going to get comments in the comment section down below asking me still. But it's only for 5.05 consoles as well, or 5.05 and lower, I should say. This as well, you need some exploit host menu of your choice, or you can use PS4R, which I'm going to be using today, to run hen, as well as to enable FTP, since we're going to be transferring files over, and we need to install the actual RetroArch PS4.pkg. Speaking of the RetroArch PS4.pkg, you also need that as well, of course. You need a USB stick either formatted to FAT32 or exFAT to actually install your PKG itself. As well, you'll need if you want to play your ROMs off your USB, which I'm going to teach you guys today, is to also have that for this process, so make sure you have a USB stick. Some other prerequisites for today: you'll need your ROMs for your respective cores, and I'll get into a little bit on which cores are supported within this build itself. So for example, I already know off the backs like Super Nintendo games could work, Nintendo games could work, or original NES I should say, Sega Genesis, and such and so forth. You may need your BIOS files, which I did cover earlier. So for certain consoles, so PS1 is an example, I think TurboGrafx and WonderSwan is an example. Just for that instance, you also need FileZilla FTP client if you want to go ahead and transfer your games that way. And I'll show you right here where your BIOS files will go in terms of this directory. So they will go into the data, RetroArch system, and this is where your BIOS files will be located at. Here is just another thing, since we covered all of the prerequisites. Here are some of the listed of supported cores / emulators that are included into this build. I do want to know, I'm not going to read everything just due to the time of this intro being too long, but just some to read off here. There's MAME, Sega Genesis, Game Boy, Game Gear. There's also Nintendo DS, which I am pretty excited to test. I'm probably going to show you guys that later on in the video. NES, as showcased here on the next slide, Virtual Boy. There's Super Nintendo, Neo Pop, Neo Geo, Meta Nefin Lynx, Atari Lynx, PlayStation 1 as I stated before, GBA, Nintendo 64, which I stated doesn't really work well, so experimental, but y'all guys get the gist. If you guys want to pause that section right here, and I will have basically the list and a link in the description down below from a website. You can read all of the supported cores. But with all of that getting out the way, I just want to give a special thanks out to all of the developers who have been working on this project. So to Flats, PSX Dev, and Fran GACJ. Sorry if I butchered your name, but anybody else who worked on this project, shouts out to you. I also want to give a shout out to Default DMB for even telling me about this, as well as to the RetroArch dev team. But I do apologize for my intro being super long, but we're just going to go ahead and get started on the PC side of things. Alrighty guys, assuming that you did follow all the prerequisites as stated in the intro, let's go ahead and get started on the PC side of things first. So just to show you the official release page, this is from GBA Temp. I will have this in a link in the description down below. This is where I got all of the information from. So all you would have to do for this, if you want to read more about it, but if you want to just get the official download for the PS4 PKG file, all you got to do is just right click over it, go to, and it will have the actual basically the RetroArch PS4 PKG. All we got to do now is, let me just close out of Chrome. As showcased here, I already have the PKG. Assuming that you just downloaded it, put it to your desktop, we're going to go ahead and get started on how to set this process up correctly. So what you need to do is just create a folder on your desktop right here. Just go ahead and label as new folder. Just call it RetroArch_ROMs, as I have mine titled here. But just for example, I'm going to delete this, but just create a folder, call it RetroArch_ROMs, and this is how you want to have your games formatted. It's not required to do it exactly as how I have it. However, you do want your games in a nice and neat format so you can find them. That's how I usually have my stuff organized. So for example, my games, you can see I have my Game Boy Advance games into one folder. I have my Sega Genesis games into one folder. I just called it Gen. My MAME games into one folder, and y'all guys probably get the idea. N64, mind you, they don't work, so that's what I want to list. NDS, so Nintendo DS, I have my PlayStation 1 games here as well. I have some Super Nintendo titles, not too sure why this is here, but yeah, here is my Super Nintendo title. So you get the gist. Make sure you have new folders labeled to whatever console you're doing for that represents your core. So Super Nintendo games going to Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis games going to Sega Genesis folder, and basically that's how you want it to have it set up. Assuming that you created a new folder, you named it as RetroArch_ROMs, you put a secondary folder for your set games into one directory. So if you have your Super Nintendo games, just put them into this folder right here. You're basically good to go for this process as well. Here are the BIOS files that I was speaking of earlier for this process. So if you're adding PlayStation 1 titles, you're going to need your BIOS files for said console. So make sure for this process you have it your BIOS for whatever console ready to go. So here's mine right here, but what you want to do as of right now is to go and plug in a flash drive USB onto your device, or your PC I should say. Make sure you have it opened up. So here's mine's right here. Make sure your thing is formatted to either exFAT or FAT32. So if I go ahead and right click properties, as showcased here, you can see that my file system is on FAT32, so I'm good to go. If your thing states that it's on NTFS, make sure you reformat your USB. So before we even reformat, if you have any data that's located on your USB drive, make sure to back it up, because anytime you basically reformat your USB drive, it will erase all your data. So that's what I want to stay out the way. So just put it on another USB or your desktop for the moment. But assuming that you either backed up your data and you're ready to go on with this process, all you got to do is right click, go into format. If your thing was on NTFS, as I stated before, make sure it's on FAT32. Allocation unit size, just put it default. Volume label, that's just the title of your USB. You can label it as anything, and then just hit OK. Then it will take a little while, and then once it's fully done, you'll get a little notification saying formatted complete. So hit OK. Open up back your file explorer, go back to your USB drive, and if you right click over it, you can see that your file system's on FAT32. So you're basically good for now. So all you got to do now is take the RetroArch PS4 PKG from the link in the description down below. You can just download it from there, drag it to here, take your RetroArch ROMs, drag it to your USB here, and you're basically good to go for this process. So what I'm going to do now is just wait for all of my games to copy over and transfer over to one directory, and then as well we're going to also set this up via on the internal hard drive once we get this onto the PS4. But I'll show you guys on this. So I'm going to teach you guys on basically how to set up the BIOS as well via on the internal hard drive once this is done. So I'll come back in 12 minutes and then we'll be able to show you, or I could be able to show you on how to do it. Alrighty guys, so as showcased here, if I show you my USB, you can see all of my contents are on here. So you have our RetroArch.ps or PKG, excuse me. We also have our RetroArch ROMs that contains all of our games. So just to show you that all of my games are into my correct directories, we're good to go for this process. So all we need to do now is just close out of our USB drive, go into hidden icons here. So eject your USB drive wherever you have your your files onto it. Just plug it into your PlayStation 4, and then we're good to go for the PC side of things as of right now. And then let's get stuff set up on the PlayStation. Alrighty guys, so as showcased here, I'm basically on my PlayStation 4. As of right now, your USB stick should be into any USB port on your PlayStation 4. So what we're going to do now is go ahead, open up a exploit web host of your choice. So I'm going into my settings, user guide. So you can use any exploit host you want. I'm just using PS4R. So here is the actual exploit host I'm using. If you guys don't know how to install a PS4R, I will have a card right now to a episode I have on my channel, and you can check that out for this process. But assuming that you're using anything like X Project, a ESP device or anything like that, make sure you go ahead and enable hen as normal. So if you ever had a modded PlayStation 4, this is just commonplace. So once hen has loaded, just go ahead and back out, go back to your exploit host again, or your WebKit exploit I should say. And then what you want to do as well for this process is enable FTP server. So once your FTP server, or for your exploit host for whatever you have, make sure you just have your IP memorized. So mine is 1.1.1.2 and the port is 1337. As of right now, what we want to do is go to our PC, open up FileZilla as well, and I'm going to teach you guys on how to transfer your games onto your data folder within the PC. Alrighty, so we're basically back onto the PC. As of right now, we just FTP'd via using the FTP server app by Lightning Mods on the PlayStation 4. So what we need to do is open up any FTP client of your choice. I'm using FileZilla. If you guys don't already have this installed onto your desktop, I will have the actual executable file and where to get that download from, of course. But all we got to do is just type in our PlayStation 4's IP. So yours will of course be different than mine's, but depending on what exploit host you want, or basically basically use. Your port may be like 9020 or maybe 1337, so just follow whatever that little notification stated for whatever exploit host you use. In my case, this is what I have to type in, so I just got to go ahead and hit quick connect. And now if you did everything correctly, you should see all of your directories on your PlayStation 4. So the directory we're going to be focusing on today is the data folder right here. As you see, I already have some stuff from RetroArch since I have it previously installed, but you probably won't have this on your device as of yet. But what we're going to do is take our data folder right here where it says RetroArch ROMs, and we're just going to put all of our ROMs into this folder right here. So right now, if I scroll into queued files, it's now transferring over Gran Turismo. It's also transferring over Parappa the Rapper, so it's not going to take too long for me since I have direct FTP going on. So I'm just using my Ethernet cable strictly from my PC. So yeah, it's fully done as of right now. Depending of course of how many games you're putting onto your device, it may take longer than usual. But if we go into RetroArch ROMs, you can see these are the same files we just transferred over to our USB as well as to our internal hard drive. So we're basically done for this process in terms of RetroArch ROMs. We're going to go ahead and come back as well because we need to reinstall RetroArch, and then we need to go ahead and put our BIOS. So what I'm going to do here is cut the video right here, install retroarch.pkg, run it one time, and then we're going to install our BIOS files as well. Alrighty, so as of right now, you should have your games already onto your internal hard drive as well as your USB. So what we need to do is actually get started installing the actual retroarch.pkg. So we're going to go ahead and come down to debug settings, go into game, package installer, install RetroArch PS4 r1.pkg. It won't take too long. It's only 290 megabytes, so it's fine for this process. So just wait for it to do its thing. Once it's fully installed, we're going to just open up the app. I'll just run through the actual UI itself and maybe play a game for like one quick second, and then we're going to go back to the PC and get the actual BIOS set up. So it's almost done right here. And it's pretty cool, like once as stated in the intro, having RetroArch on a PlayStation 4 as its own native app rather than using like the PS2 repackaged stuff is cool. So voila, here is RetroArch. So congratulations, you got this far in the tutorial. All you gotta do is just open the app as normal. So just go ahead and open it, and here is RetroArch. So you can see the general XMB right here. So it looks like any other RetroArch. You can see that I was testing out some games before, but what we're going to do now is just show that I could run some titles. So let's go into load core, so you could load any core you want. We're going to do SNES 9 2010. This is the one I recommend for Super Nintendo games. We're going to do, if I go into load content, go into USB 0, this is where our games are located. Here's RetroArch ROMs. The way how you select through RetroArch is with circle, by the way, and then just follow where your games are located. So Super Nintendo, here's Street Fighter 2, press circle again, and then on the screen you can see that Street Fighter 2 is running on my console. One thing I do want to state, let me turn this down so Street Fighter's audio won't come through. If you hold R1, L1 and options and share at the same time, you gotta like do it pretty fast. You may have to do it twice or something like that, since the share button may screenshot. But this is the actual menu. So for example, this is the same menu you will typically get for RetroArch. So you can see if you wanted to change the controls, cheats, install shaders, overrides and stuff like that, you can. If you want to add this game to favorites, which I just did since I'm definitely going to be playing some of this later, you can. If you want to take a screenshot, which you can do that regularly with the PS4 as well, you can for this process. If you wanted to add anything like that or switch other games, you can. So yeah, just to show you here, if I go back and out the main menu real quick, let me go to quick menu, resume. You can see that the game is running perfectly fine. I'll just play a little bit just so you guys can see. So yeah, here's me playing as Ryu, if I could play right now. But yeah, you guys basically get the idea. So let me go ahead and close out the application right here. What we're going to do as of right now is just go back into our settings, because I'm going to teach you guys on how to set up your BIOS. So go into user guide, go into user guide again. We're going to also go into the actual FTP server application again. So just rerun the payload so we could activate our FTP server. It will, announce once again your IP port. So just go back to whatever exploit host you are going to for this process. And then what we're going to do is go to the PC and get our BIOS set up as of right now. Alrighty, so as of right now, we're back onto the PC. We got our IP address already showcased onto the PlayStation 4, so our ports are now open. Just go ahead and type back in your host IP address. So these is mine right here. Of course, yours will be different, but just go ahead, click connect. Look for all of your directories. Let me make it big screen so you guys can see. We're going to go into data once again. You should already have your RetroArch folder into this folder right here now. And this is where you can add, you see your save states at. You can also add cover art, I believe, in the thumbnail section right here. Here's your RetroArch configuration. And there's just some, a bunch of stuff you could mess around with. The thing we're going to be messing around with is system, and this is where we're going to be putting our BIOS files for. So if whatever core may ask you while you play a game, if it states like in the left hand corner, it'll say, hey, this emulator may need BIOS to run better, or just have better performance, or it may strictly just tell you the game won't just run. Make sure you put your BIOS into this folder. So here is my PlayStation 1 BIOS. I'm just gonna dump it in here. So here's the PS1. So that is fully done now. So if you had something like your WonderSwan BIOS, if you had Nintendo BIOS, or whatever, whatever core needs some respective BIOS, you could check on RetroArch.com for which cores need a certain BIOS for said core. But with that being out the way in terms of this, you can see we got everything set up via on here. So what we're going to do is go back to our PlayStation 4, and I'm going to showcase that we're going to be running a PlayStation 1 title off the internal hard drive. So let's go ahead and show. Alrighty, so we're back onto the PlayStation 4 once again. Let's go ahead and open up RetroArch. We just got our BIOS installed for our said core, which was the PlayStation 1, what we were trying to do for this process. So we're going to go into load core once again. Find our PlayStation 1 core, which is PCSX rearmed. Just let it do its thing. It'll be a black screen. We're going to go to load content. We're going to go to our data folder right here. Here is where our RetroArch ROMs are located at. And we're going to go and find our PS1 ROMs. I think I know why it's probably not searching for my PS1 ROMs here, because I put it in the wrong folder. But we could do Crash Bandicoot for today's example. Why not? But yeah, here is, basically Crash Bandicoot running just fine on the PlayStation 4. So you could, if I back out, you could see that, PS4 natively, if it was a regular device or, a regular PlayStation 4, it couldn't run a Crash Bandicoot since PS1 games can't run on PS4. But with a modded PlayStation 4, you're able to run your favorite PS1 classic games. So I'll just play a little bit through it. And probably what I'm going to do for this process as well is just do like a little game showcase of certain games running through the emulator. So I may play like Super Nintendo games, Sega Genesis games after the segment. So it'll just be a showcase, just so you can see the performance of the actual emulator. Of course, it's a PlayStation. I'm playing this on my PlayStation 4 Pro, so I shouldn't have any issues with playing like old classic games. It has, the power to do so. So yeah, here is Crash Bandicoot running on, the PS4. And yeah, this is essentially on how to set up, RetroArch for your modded PlayStation 4. So if you guys did enjoy this video, please be sure to share. Please be sure to, share with your friends and, like. But with that being all out the way, my name is Nagato's Revenge, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys for watching.
Round one, fight! Hadouken! Hadouken!
Hey everyone, it's me Nagato's Adventure. Hope you guys did enjoy today's video. With that being out the way as well, I highly do recommend that y'all guys go ahead and follow my social media so you never miss any of the latest hacking guides and tutorials on my channel. By subscribing to me and hitting that notification button as well is another method on how you will know when I drop my latest content, whether it be for the Vita, PS4, PS3, and such and so forth. As well, if you want to be in the mix of things and you want to join my official community, you can join via the link right now showcased on the screen and join my Discord that way. And if you do want to support my channel in any shape or form, you could become a patron. I will have a card right now. But with all of that getting out the way, hope you guys really did enjoy this video, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Of course, I love the llamas.
Nice and silky smooth.